Welcome, everyone. Today you're about to witness one of the most powerful and important stories in human history. This is not a fictional tale. This is a real story. The story of a boy who was born into a world of bloodshed, betrayal, and broken empires, and somehow, without anyone expecting it, became the most powerful man on earth, the first emperor of Rome. His name was Augustus. You may have heard of Julius Caesar. He was the man who changed Rome. But Augustus was the one who built it. He didn't do it by shouting. He didn't do it by showing off his muscles. He did it with something far more powerful. His mind, his patience, his silence, his focus, his timing. In this story, you will learn how an 18-year-old teenager with no army and no experience became the ruler of the world, how he fought through betrayals, civil wars, and deadly enemies, and survived, how he defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra, two of the most powerful people of his time, and how he transformed Rome from a chaotic republic into a strong, peaceful empire that lasted for centuries. This is not just history. This is strategy. This is power. This is transformation. And if you're learning English, this story is perfect for you. Why? Because this video is written in very simple English, so you can understand every sentence. You will improve your vocabulary, listening, and confidence while enjoying a story that will inspire you. So before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because here we don't just teach English, we teach life. We give you stories that stay in your heart. We help you grow, and we help you become the person you were born to be. Now let's begin the true story of the boy who became emperor. Chapter 1. The boy who lost his father and found a legacy. Before he was called Augustus, his real name was Gaius Octavius. He was born in the year 63 BC in a small town near Rome. His family was not poor. They were from a class called the equestrians. That means they had some status, but they were not very powerful. But Octavius had one special connection. His mother Atia was the niece of Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome. So even though Octavius was not rich or famous himself, he had a blood connection to power. But when he was just a boy, his father died. Octavius was raised by his mother and grandmother. He was often sick and physically weak. He was not a soldier. He didn't look like a warrior. He didn't grow up with weapons. He grew up with books, teachers, and quiet thinking. From the outside, he looked like an ordinary boy. But inside him was something rare, a sharp mind, a cold heart, a quiet hunger for greatness. When Octavius was a teenager, he was invited by Julius Caesar, his great-uncle, to join him in Spain. But on the way there, he had an accident and was delayed. Caesar went ahead without him. Still, Caesar saw something in the boy, something serious, something different. He began to consider him not just a family member, but an heir. In 44 BC, the entire world of Rome exploded. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the Republic, was stabbed to death by his own senators in the Roman Senate. They thought they were saving Rome from dictatorship, but they were actually throwing Rome into civil war. And then came the biggest twist of all. When Caesar's will was read, the entire Roman world was shocked. He had named Octavius, the quiet teenage boy, as his adopted son and his legal heir. In that moment, the boy Gaius Octavius became the adopted son of Julius Caesar, the legal successor to the most powerful man in Rome and someone with a new name, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. He was only 18 years old. At first, nobody took Octavian seriously. He had no army, no experience, no fame, no strength. The great generals of Rome, like Mark Antony, thought he was just a boy pretending to be a man. But Octavian didn't care. He didn't argue. He didn't fight back with words. He started collecting power silently. He began raising an army with money he inherited from Caesar. He started speaking to the people using Caesar's name. He began to outsmart the older politicians one by one. He didn't use rage. He used strategy. Julius Caesar had been bold, loud, and dramatic. He walked into the Senate with power and pride, and he died there. Octavian was different. He was cold, patient, and calculating. He didn't walk into power. He waited for it. He planned for it, and he would never ever let it slip from his hands. Rome was now in chaos. After Caesar's death, the Senate was weak. The people were angry. Civil war was brewing again. Mark Antony, Caesar's top general, believed he would take power. But this 18-year-old adopted son had other plans. He would pretend to be weak while growing strong. He would use Caesar's name to gain trust. He would build alliances only to break them later. This was not a game for the brave. This was a game for the wise. Chapter 2: The Rise of a Political Killer. He was going to use something far more dangerous: his brain. He would enter Rome not as a soldier, but as Caesar's heir. He would speak softly, promise peace, and smile in the faces of men who planned to destroy him. But behind that smile was something cold, something quiet, something deadly. One of the most dangerous men in Rome at that time was Mark Antony. He was older, stronger, more famous, and had fought wars for Caesar. After Caesar's death, Antony tried to take control of Rome by controlling Caesar's documents, land, and money. He didn't respect Octavian. He laughed at him. He ignored him. But Octavian had one thing Antony didn't: the name Caesar. And in Rome, that name had power over the people. So Octavian started using it. He gave money to the people. Money that Caesar had promised in his will. He built an army using his inheritance. He spoke directly to the public, not the Senate. People began to whisper, "This boy is Caesar's son. He is the future." Mark Antony saw this, and he was not happy. But Octavian was not interested in open war yet. He knew he was still too weak. So he did something shocking. He made a temporary peace, even with people he hated. He formed an alliance with Mark Antony, his rival, Lepidus, another general loyal to Caesar. Together they created a group called the Second Triumvirate, a legal dictatorship of 3 men ruling Rome. It looked like peace, but it wasn't peace. It was a cold, calculated decision by Octavian. He knew they would need each other to eliminate their enemies first. Now begins one of the darkest and most powerful parts of Augustus's rise. The triumvirate published a list of names. These were enemies of Caesar and enemies of the new order. This list was called the Prescriptions. It was not just a list. It was a death sentence. Over 2,000 Roman citizens were declared enemies of the state. Senators, rich men, political enemies, even people who had personal conflicts with the triumvirs. If your name was on that list, you could be hunted, arrested, or killed, and your property would be taken. One of the most famous victims was Cicero, the great Roman speaker and philosopher. Cicero had spoken out against tyranny. He hated Caesar. He hated Antony. And Octavian had once shown respect to him. But now the game had changed. Octavian allowed Cicero's name to stay on the list. Cicero was caught. He was killed. His head and hands were cut off and displayed in the forum. People understood the message. The boy had become a killer, and no one was safe. After the Prescriptions, the triumvirate focused on their biggest enemies, the men who had killed Julius Caesar. Their names were Brutus and Cases, the leaders of the conspiracy that had stabbed Caesar to death. They had escaped to the east, gathered armies, and prepared for war. So now the three rulers of Rome, Octavian, Anthony, and Lepidus, prepared to march east and fight them. The final battle happened in Philippi in 42 BC. It was a massive and bloody battle. Mark Antony led most of the fighting while Octavian was sick and weak during the campaign, but the result was clear. Brutus and Caesar were defeated. Both committed suicide after their loss. This was a major turning point. The killers of Julius Caesar were now dead. Octavian had avenged his father's death. And now the war was not over. It was just changing shape. After the Battle of Philippi, there were only three rulers of Rome. One, Octavian, now richer and more dangerous. Two, Mark Antony, still powerful and commanding armies. Three, Lepidus, slowly becoming irrelevant, but power cannot be shared forever. Soon, Lepidus was pushed out. Octavian removed him from power and took control of his territory. Now, it was just two men left. Octavian versus Anthony. And here's where the story becomes even more personal. Because Mark Antony fell in love with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. And Cleopatra had also once loved Julius Caesar. She had even given birth to Caesar's child. This created a complicated situation. Cleopatra had been the lover of Caesar. Now she was with Anthony. Octavian was Caesar's adopted son and felt betrayed. Anthony began living in Egypt with Cleopatra. He started behaving like an Egyptian king instead of a Roman leader. He even declared Caesarion, Cleopatra's son by Julius Caesar, to be the true heir of Caesar. This was a direct attack on Octavian. Octavian knew the people of Rome would not accept this. So he used the situation perfectly. He spread propaganda saying Anthony was under Cleopatra's spell. He said Anthony was giving away Roman lands to Egypt. He said Anthony had betrayed Rome. Soon, the Senate and the people began turning against Antony. Octavian had just one task left: destroy Antony and Cleopatra. But he wouldn't do it with politics anymore. Now it was time for war. Chapter 3, The Fall of Anthony and Cleopatra. And now the final war between them was coming. It would not be a small war. It would be a war for the entire future of the Roman Empire. Who would rule the world? Cleopatra. To understand how serious this war was, we need to understand Cleopatra. Cleopatra was not just a queen. She was a powerful, intelligent, and clever ruler. She was beautiful and dangerous and had once been the lover of Julius Caesar. With Caesar, she had a child, a boy named Caesarion. After Caesar's death, Cleopatra turned to another powerful Roman, Mark Antony. Together, Antony and Cleopatra ruled in the East. They acted like kings and queens. They wore Egyptian clothes. They held Egyptian-style ceremonies. They lived far away from Rome, and they became more Egyptian than Roman. This made many people in Rome angry and afraid. They thought Anthony had turned his back on Rome. They believed Cleopatra had used her beauty and charm to control him. And this is where Octavian saw his opportunity. He would not just fight Antony. He would make the people believe that Anthony had betrayed Rome. And Octavian, the son of Caesar, would now save it. Octavian understood something very important. People do not always follow strength. Sometimes they follow a story. So he began to tell a story again and again to the Roman people. Mark Antony has betrayed Rome. He lives in Egypt like a king. He follows Cleopatra, a foreign queen. He wants to give Roman lands to her and to Caesar's illegitimate child. He has forgotten who he is. He has forgotten us. I, Octavian, will protect Rome. This was smart. It was powerful. And most of all, it worked. People began to see Anthony as a traitor. Octavian asked the Senate to remove Antony's power. He also made Caesarion look like a false heir, a threat to Rome. And finally, in 31 BC, war was declared. The final battle took place in a place called Actium, near the western coast of Greece. On one side, Octavian's forces led by his brilliant general Agria, a well-organized navy, powerful strategy, and clear command. On the other side, Mark Antony and Cleopatra with ships from Egypt, a large navy but divided leadership and low morale. The battle was difficult at first. The sea was full of warships. Both sides struggled. But then something strange happened. During the battle, Cleopatra's ship suddenly left and began to sail away. No one knows exactly why. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe it was part of a plan. But when she left, Antony followed her, leaving his own men behind. This was a huge mistake. Octavian's forces attacked. The enemy ships were confused, leaderless, and lost. Octavian won. It was not just a military victory. It was a moment that changed history forever. After the battle, Antony and Cleopatra returned to Egypt. They knew their power was over. Rome was now with Octavian. His armies were marching toward Egypt. Both Antony and Cleopatra knew what was coming. They would be captured. They would be taken to Rome. They would be paraded through the streets like animals. They would be humiliated in front of the people. Neither of them could accept that. So they chose death. Mark Antony tried to kill himself with his sword, but his first attempt failed. Bleeding and dying slowly, he was taken to Cleopatra. In her arms, he died. Cleopatra, full of sorrow, pain, and pride, took her own life soon after. There are many stories about how she died. Some say she used poison. Some say she allowed a poisonous snake to bite her. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. They died together. And with their death, the war was over. After their death, Octavian entered Egypt. He took control of everything. He made Egypt part of the Roman Empire. He also captured Caesarion, the son of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Some believed Caesarion was the true heir of Caesar, but Octavian could not allow that. So he quietly ordered the boy's death. It was cold. It was cruel. But it was also necessary. If Octavian was to become the one and only ruler of Rome, now there were no rivals left, no enemies, no more wars. Rome had started as a republic where leaders were elected and power was shared. But after years of blood and civil war, the people were tired. They didn't want arguments in the Senate. They didn't want weak leaders. They wanted peace. They wanted order. They wanted one man who could lead them. Octavian gave them all of that. He did not call himself king. That word was hated in Rome. Instead, in the year 27 BC, he was given a new title by the Senate, Augustus, which means the honored one, the majestic one, or the great one. From that day forward, he was no longer just Octavian. He was Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. He became something Rome had never seen before. He had full control of the military. He controlled the Senate, even if they didn't realize it. He made laws, guided culture, reformed taxes, and created jobs. He built roads, repaired cities, and brought peace across the empire. And the people loved him for it. Even though he ruled like a king, he acted like a servant of the people. He was calm. He was quiet. He never shouted. He never needed to, because he had already won the game. After the deaths of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and after the boy Caesarion was quietly removed, there were no enemies left, no more battles, no more rivals, no more wars. Octavian, now called Augustus, had complete control. He ruled the army. He controlled the Senate. He ruled the lands of Rome from west to east. The people respected him. The soldiers obeyed him. The Senate gave him honors. But here is what made Augustus different from all other powerful men before him. He did not destroy the government. He did not become a dictator. He did not wear a crown or call himself king. He did not show off. Instead, he made it look like nothing changed. But secretly, everything changed. The old Roman system was called a republic. In that system, power was shared between different people. But for years, the republic had been full of corruption, fighting, and civil war. The people were tired. The Senate was weak. The soldiers were loyal only to their generals. Augustus understood something important. If you want to keep power forever, don't make people afraid of you. Make them feel safe with you. So in the year 27 BC, he made a great public speech. He told the Senate, "I give back all power to the Senate and the people of Rome. I don't want to rule alone." But that was not true. It was a trick. A smart trick. The Senate, surprised and emotional, replied, "No, Augustus, you are the only one who can save Rome. Please keep the power." And then they gave him a new name, Augustus, which means respected, great, sacred. It was not just a title. It was the beginning of something new. That day, the Roman Empire was born, and Augustus became its first emperor. But he still called himself prince, which means first citizen, not king. This was his style. He ruled completely, but silently. He held power, but looked humble. He changed everything, but made it feel like nothing changed. For almost 100 years, Rome had suffered. Civil wars, betrayals, political murders, chaos and confusion. But now, under Augustus, peace came. This long period of peace was called Pax Romana, which means Roman peace. For over 40 years, Augustus kept the empire safe and strong. People could travel across Rome without fear. Trade increased. Businesses grew. Farmers felt secure. The army protected the borders. Pirates were destroyed. Roads were built. People said, "Augustus gave us peace. Augustus gave us life." This was not just government. This was something deeper. He created order in a world that had been broken. One of the smartest things Augustus did was change the military system. In the old republic, soldiers were often loyal to their generals, not to the government. That's why there were so many civil wars. Soldiers followed whoever gave them money or promises. Augustus said this must stop. So he created a professional army, gave them regular pay, retirement benefits, and land. Made the soldiers swear loyalty to him, not to any general. He also created a special personal army called the Taurian Guard to protect himself and his family. This was important because many powerful leaders had been killed before. Augustus never forgot what happened to Julius Caesar. The city of Rome had been damaged by fires, wars, and poor planning. Augustus wanted to make Rome beautiful again. He said, "I found Rome a city of bricks. I leave it a city of marble." And he did. He built new temples, new public buildings, clean and safe roads, aqueducts which brought clean water into the city, public baths and theaters, a postal system to send messages across the empire. He made Rome a capital that reflected the greatness of his empire. He gave more power to local governors in different parts of the empire. He made tax collection fairer and more organized. He started a census system to count the population and understand the needs of each area. He created new laws and rules for morality, encouraging family life, marriage, and discipline. He didn't just rule with force, he ruled with structure. People began to say, "Augustus doesn't just control the empire, he built it." From the outside, Augustus looked perfect. A strong leader, a patient man, a builder of peace. But his personal life was not perfect. He married a woman named Livia, who was smart and politically wise. They stayed married for decades, but they never had a son together. Augustus had a daughter from an earlier marriage. Her name was Julia. Julia's life was difficult. She was forced into several political marriages. Augustus hoped that through Julia's husbands, he would find a strong heir. But Julia was not like him. She was social, free-spirited, and often in trouble. Eventually, Augustus became ashamed of her behavior and banished her from Rome. This was a painful decision. The emperor who ruled the world could not control his own daughter. As Augustus became older, he thought deeply about what would happen after he died. He wanted his empire to continue. He wanted peace to last. He didn't want another war to start after his death, so he started preparing. He adopted a young man named Tiberius, the son of his wife Livia, and made him the next in line. He trained him, gave him job, slowly made him ready. Augustus also wrote down a list of his achievements called the Recestae, so people would remember what he had done. It included all the temples he built, the lands he conquered, the peace he brought, and the lives he changed. He knew something very important. Even emperors die, but great actions live forever. In his lifetime, Augustus never claimed to be a god, but after his death, many people worshipped him as one. They built temples in his name. They called him the father of the nation. They said he had brought light to darkness. But Augustus had always said, "I am just a man who saved a broken world." And maybe that was true. Chapter 4. The Death of a Man. The Birth of Eternity. After ruling Rome for more than 40 years, Augustus was no longer young. His body was tired, his health was weak. He suffered from pain, fever, and sickness again and again. But his mind was still sharp. Even in old age, he woke early. He read reports. He asked questions. He watched everything carefully. He knew something very important. The greatest danger is not while I am alive. The greatest danger is what happens after I die. So his final years were not about enjoying luxury. They were about protecting the future of Rome. Augustus often thought about his journey. He remembered the weak, sick boy. People laughed at the 18-year-old who inherited enemies instead of power. The years of civil war, blood, and betrayal. The deaths of Antony and Cleopatra. The long peace he created. The city he rebuilt. The empire he stabilized. He did not call himself a hero. He simply believed he had done what was necessary. He once said, "I found Rome broken. I leave it strong." And that sentence described his entire life, the question of the heir. Who will rule after me? This was Augustus's greatest worry. He had lost many possible heirs. Some died young, some were weak, some disappointed him. Finally, he chose Tiberius, the son of his wife, Livia. Tiberius was not charming. He was not loved by the people, but he was disciplined, experienced, and strong. Augustus slowly gave Tiberius more responsibility: military commands, political power, public authority. He wanted Rome to slowly accept Tiberius, not suddenly fear him. Augustus had learned this lesson from Julius Caesar's death. In the year 14 AD, Augustus was very old. He decided to travel one last time. Not as a conqueror, but as a man returning home. He went to the town of Nola, the same place where his father had once died. His body was weak. He knew the end was near, but his mind was calm. He spoke to his friends. He spoke to his wife, Livia. He gave final advice to Tiberius. There was no panic, no fear, no regret. According to Roman writers, Augustus asked a strange but powerful question near the end of his life. He said, "If I have played my part well, applaud as I leave the stage." This sentence tells us everything about him. He saw life like a performance, a role that must be played carefully, seriously, and with purpose. And now the performance was over. Augustus died peacefully in his bed, surrounded by people he trusted. This alone was rare. Most Roman leaders were murdered, were betrayed, were killed violently. But Augustus died in peace because he had created peace. When news of his death reached Rome, the city fell silent. People cried in the streets. Soldiers lowered their heads. The Senate went into mourning. Why? Because for most Romans alive at that time, Augustus was the only ruler they had ever known. He was not just an emperor. He was the man who ended chaos, the man who brought stability, the man who gave them peace, roads, food, and safety. Rome had lost its father. After his death, the Senate made a decision. They declared Augustus a god. Temples were built in his name. Priests honored him. Festivals remembered him. But something even more powerful happened. His system survived. The empire did not collapse. The army stayed loyal. The borders held. The government continued. This was the true test. Many rulers conquer land. Very few build systems that survive them. Augustus did. Let's stop for a moment and understand why Augustus matters so much even today. He did not rule by fear. He ruled by structure. He did not shout. He waited. He did not destroy Rome's traditions. He used them to hide his power. He understood human nature. People fear sudden change. People accept slow control. People follow those who bring peace. Augustus mastered this better than anyone in history. That is why his empire lasted for centuries. His name became a title for future emperors. His influence shaped Europe, law, government, and culture. Even today, modern systems of leadership, government, and power still carry his fingerprints. Augustus teaches us something very deep. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. You do not need to rush to win. You do not need to look strong to become strong. He won because he observed more than he spoke, planned more than he fought, waited more than he rushed, controlled emotions instead of reacting. The world remembers conquerors, but the world is built by architects. Augustus was an architect of power. This story is not only history. It is a lesson in patience, strategy, self-control, long-term thinking, silent strength. And if you are learning English, this story has helped you in another way. You learned how to follow long ideas, how to understand history in simple language, how to stay focused for long listening, how to grow your English naturally through stories. That is how language is truly learned. Not by memorizing, but by living inside meaning. Augustus never wanted to be remembered as a king. He wanted to be remembered as the man who saved Rome. And history agreed. He did not just rule an empire. He created one, stabilized it, and left it standing. Left. From a weak boy to a silent ruler to an eternal legacy. This is the real story of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. 7 life-changing lessons from the life of Augustus. 1. Power does not always shout. Sometimes it waits. Augustus didn't scream to be heard. He didn't fight to be seen. He waited. He planned, he observed, and in silence, he became the most powerful man at the world. Lesson: you don't need to be loud to be strong. Be calm. Be patient. Power comes to those who think long-term. 2. Use your weakness as a weapon. He was sick, small, and ignored. People laughed at him, but he used that weakness to stay unnoticed until it was too late for his enemies. Lesson: if people underestimate you, let them. That's your advantage. Rise in silence. Shock the world with your success. 3. Don't fight every battle. Choose the right one. Augustus did not fight everyone. He waited for the right moment. He made alliances even with enemies just to survive and grow. Lesson: you don't have to respond to every insult or challenge. Focus your energy. Let small things go. Win the war, not just one battle. 4. Build systems, not just moments. He didn't just rule, he created structure. He made laws, fixed taxes, organized the army, built roads, and prepared the future. Lesson: don't just chase success. Build a life that can survive without noise. Build a system, not a fantasy. 5. Keep your emotions under control. He never reacted with emotion. He never made decisions in anger. He stayed cool, focused, and strategic. Lesson: learn emotional control. Never let feelings destroy your future. Stay still when others shake. 6. Let your actions speak for you. Augustus didn't tell people he was powerful. He proved it through results, peace, growth, and order. Lesson: don't talk about your dreams. Let your work become your voice. 7. Prepare for the end while you're still strong. He didn't wait for death to surprise him. He trained his heir. He wrote his achievements. He shaped his legacy. Lesson: don't wait to plan your future. Start now. Think beyond today. Greatness is not about one victory. It's about what you leave behind. There are two kinds of people in history: those who are remembered for the wars they won, and those who are remembered for the peace they built. Augustus was not a warrior king. He was something rarer. He was a mind builder, a system creator, a quiet emperor who ruled with patience and precision. He proved that you don't need a sword to win the world. You need vision. You need self-control. You need discipline. And you need time. He never wanted to become a god, but history turned him into one. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. And today, as you finish his story, ask yourself, can I be like him in my own life? Can I rise without noise? Can I build without drama? Can I stay calm while others panic? Because if a weak boy from a broken family can become the builder of an empire, then what's stopping you? This was not just a history lesson. This was a mirror. This was a roadmap. This was a message. You don't need to be born powerful. You just need to learn how power works and then build your empire in silence, just like Augustus. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now because here we don't just tell stories. We help you grow stronger one word at a time.